even fucking cry.
Monkey D. Goofy. D. Goofy. I'm just slobbering this bad guy.
Why would they do that, bro?
Bro, because this kid you ready, don't Yeah, no!
What's good, people? It's your boy T-Rav, and I am back once again for the first movie review of 2022. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's so good to be here, y'all. It's so good to be here. So, I went and saw The Kingsman today. Spoilers, obviously. Spoilers. And I have to say, it was a pretty fun ride. I wasn't too hyped to go see this movie because of what happened in number 2. I was done with it. I wasn't liking where the series was going. And I was just like, you know what? We should be done with this series. Now, when the first trailer came out, I had renewed hope, right? And I was like, man, maybe, just maybe they can pull it off this time, you know, because like when Kingsman first came out, y'all, this series had a lot of potential. I really do think so. And I think the first one was fine, but they needed to go a certain route in number 2 and beyond. They didn't. They kept it childish, you know, unnecessary slow-mo stuff, jokes on jokes, and it's just not a lot of stakes. Doesn't feel very threatening to people we're going up against, so on and so forth, right? But with this movie, we're not keeping up with the present day, so we take it all the way back to the birth of the Kingsman, secret agency service, essentially. And it's 1902. You're getting to see a younger Ralph, when Conrad is a wee little boy. You know, he's probably like 6 or 7 years old at the time. And Ralph is working with the Red Cross and stuff. But at the same time, you can tell he's kind of more plugged in than that. And he's the Duke of Oxford, so he's, I guess, one of the main dudes that's been helping out the armies and stuff like that, providing aid, support, all that stuff. But you see just in the beginning of the movie already that the side that Great Britain's on is putting people in concentration camps, things like that. So messed up stuff, but they believe, hey, this is the reason why we're winning the war. And one of those soldiers even remarks as such. And then he has a problem with it, all that. And then his wife seems like a very nice lady and stuff like that. And she's, you know, talking to Conrad, all that stuff. Then she, you know, steps out the carriage. Then, you know, the whole camp gets assaulted and stuff like that. And it's an ambush, obviously so. And the goal was to try and take out the General Kitchens. And obviously his wife gets hit instead. Now, I'm not going to sit here and act like it was the greatest in terms of like directing and how they're making some of these scenes come about, because it's kind of predictable, to be honest with you. But when you got a really good actor like Ralph Fiennes, it's like he can pull his weight enough to where you're like, damn, that's still really good acting. Because I'm telling you, the pain in this man, and he even like hurried up and covered the body up, and his son runs to him out of the carriage where his mother had told him to stay. And they put, shout out to our guy, you know, Shola, the person that they call Merlin, who ends up going on to be Merlin and stuff. But he was on job from the beginning. You could tell, like, as soon as like the ambush went down from the sniper, he must have been outrun his son, because he snuck up from behind him and actually took down the threat, and before anybody else could be taken out. But so we skipped 12 years after that, right? And now Conrad is, you know, probably like 18, 19, something like that. I think he's actually like 18 years old. So he's not ready enough to go to war yet. I guess you have to be 19 years old to actually go and enlist. But in general, his father has basically never really let him leave the house like that, stuff like that. And his father's not in the greatest shape anymore, you know what I'm saying? And his legs, he's got a bum leg for all intents and purposes, because the shot from back then, it wasn't treated properly, things like that. But you can tell he's just holding on to his son for dear life, because the last promise that he made to his wife with her dying breath was that he would keep his son from knowing war and have this be the last time he sees tragedy like that. But the problem is, my guy, is that you can't really do that with your son and expect it to work out, bro. Because the more and more you try and shelter this boy from what his future will most likely inevitably be, then the more you're gonna end up pushing him toward it. And that's actually what kind of happens. And it's very sad because, you know, the father is actually right come later on in the movie, but this is his journey as a character. He has to learn how to let go and let his son be his own man, stuff like that. And he even lets him come along with him like one time, I guess, out of nowhere. He goes and he's, I guess, going to ride with the Duke of Ferdinand and stuff like that, because they came to a certain country and they're riding in a parade, and this organization is starting to take steps, and a bomber throws a bomb out at the car. His son deflects it away and actually saves his father's friend from assassination or whatever. But like literally like 15 minutes later, he gets a second chance, and then he takes out, you know, his father's friend and then his wife. Now, it was interesting to see because it was like I don't think the boy really understood yet that like this is real deal. Like, yeah, he was still too doe-eyed. He was still too hungry to go try and prove himself, and he has this sense that he wants to serve his country and he wants to do something noble and he wants to do basically have a story to tell that's worth telling to people and to live up to his name and stuff like that. Even his father has a Victorian cross. He wants to go and get something like that because he gets feathers back in his hometown, and that's actually the sign of a coward, because obviously he's soft, stuff like that, for not going out to war. And his father's already viewed as a coward by reputation, but obviously we know what his character actually is, and that was a cool thing that where I was making the distinction before he goes out after a couple of missions and stuff. He makes the distinction. He's like, your reputation is something that other people assign to you, basically, but your character, that's who you really are. And it was really cool how he broke that down, because in reality, he is a man of whose reputation is that he's just kind of a coward, stuff like that. Or a man that won't take action, a pacifist, not necessarily a coward, because most people just refer to him as a pacifist, and that's real deal. He took a vow of pacifism after his wife died and stuff like that. But in the background, he had also kind of already created an organization, which is actually just his own people that work, like him and a couple of his servants have basically created this organization that's not known as Kingsman yet, but it will be. Yeah, we know. But it was cool because, like, at the end of the day, he couldn't sit by and do nothing, especially while governments are basically getting in each other's way. And you can see more and more throughout the movie that the bureaucracy and stuff is just, honestly, it's mucking things up so bad that you need someone to come in there and honestly just fix the problem. Because what they set up as the big conflict of the movie that's going to take place, obviously, is what's leading up to World War I, and they break down the three grandsons, I think, of Queen Victoria, or something like the three sons of Queen Victoria. They're all cousins, and that they go on to be the leaders of Great Britain, and then of Germany, and then of Russia, right? But obviously, they were always feuding back in the day. The guy who's running Germany is the older brother, but he has deformities and stuff like that. And the Tsar Nicholas, he seems jaded and spiteful, especially towards the eldest sibling. And then King George just seems kind of like a punk, but he's the voice of reason, stuff like that. But it's wild because the organization that's the bad guys in this movie, they have already infiltrated basically every government and stuff like that, and for the most part, they're the advisors of all of the presiding powers at the time. Literally, the right-hand man to the the German leader, he's feeding them all this information and all this other stuff to basically try and convince America to not join the war, because if America comes and joins the war, then that'll essentially put a stop to everything. But what their plan is, they're trying to hope that they can get Russia to withdraw from being involved with the war at all, and that way Germany can essentially go and take Great Britain down with full force. Now, obviously, we got to be the ones to stop that and stuff like that. But the one who is deemed as the most of a problem is Rasputin. And my goodness, thank you. He was one of the standouts in this movie. No doubt, 100%. If you watched the trailers, you probably didn't know what you was in for, and I definitely didn't. Because this dude is a freaky man. A man, I don't even know if that's the proper term to describe it. But he is a crazy ass dude, okay? Because he is exerting his influence over the Tsar. And it's actually crazy because he's a real figure in history and he was murdered and stuff like that. But he was, the rumors were that he was, in real life, exerting some type of influence over the Tsar Nicholas. And then he was even rumored to be having an affair with his wife, stuff like that. And he was a religious priest of some sort, stuff like that. So it's really wild that they used him to, they used all the advisors to manipulate all of the leaders in power and stuff like that. But he was definitely coming out with the most energy to me, you know what I'm saying? And honestly, that was one of the big problems with this movie. Because he comes out hard, son. You know what I'm saying? He's like, you know, he's making it known that he ain't really messing with you, Mr. Leader. Okay, yeah. Give me the tortoise for the ring, because, you know, he gives out rings to all of his minions that are serving him, and Rasputin's one of them. And he gives them the tortoise and stuff like that. And he wanted to switch animals with somebody else. But then he makes remarks like, oh yeah, the tortoise is going to win the race anyway. But it's crazy because the mission that they launched to go and take him down, they bring Conrad along because he has a proclivity to... or an attraction of sorts to little boys. That's wild. Now, Conrad's of age, obviously, but you can tell that he's like, it's Rasputin, okay? I don't really know what you want me to say about it. So they're basically dangling Conrad out there to entice Rasputin, and so they can, I guess, get the intel and then take him out so he won't be a problem anymore. But man, when I tell you that he was ready for the smoke, he was ready for the smoke. But not before we get one of the weirdest scenes where, you know, Ralph Fiennes, he hobbles in there because Rasputin loses all interest with Conrad. He views him as boring, but he's taking a liking to his father. So his father's playing along. Obviously, you can tell he's way more. I mean, it's not even way more seasoned. He's in another league. Like, he knows how to do this espionage stuff. And it's crazy because you don't really know how many missions he's been on, but from the way he makes it seem, he's been around the block many a time. But now he's got the bum leg and stuff like that. We're not sure how he's really going to fare. And then Rasputin offers to heal him and stuff like that. And heal his leg, which is crazy. And I don't know how true that is, but I did a little bit of research on just a bare minimum Google search on Rasputin. And apparently he did actually have healing prowess enough to where he could help fix the blood flow. And that was one of the reasons why apparently the Tsar was so taken by him, is because he could like stop the bleeding of their hemophiliac son. Now that's pretty wild if he was able to do all that. And it's not, I guess, implausible, but the way he displays it in this movie is kind of crazy, because if you weren't seeing what was actually happening in the room, you would think something else crazy is happening. But he starts hypnotizing Ralph and stuff like that through these deep moan chants. It's really kind of wild. It's like it's like some real deep voice monster type stuff when he starts like humming like that, but it kind of hypnotizes him, and then he starts pressing on his leg, and he even starts licking on his leg. It's like, it's really wild, bro. But then he turns, and obviously, because he knows that Ralph isn't who he says he is, and he actually gets him to spill the beans on why he's there. Then Conrad and Shola bust in, and it's an all-out battle, basically, because Ralph is kind of, you know, he's out of commission right now. But he's going to regain himself in just a few minutes, but not after a sick fight between Shola and then Rasputin. Because, I mean, dog, this nigga was like a whirling dervish. He was hopping up and down. He was breakdancing, kicks to the face. I mean, they were fighting with swords, you know, punching each other up, all that stuff, man. Like, Rasputin was honestly a problem. He was taking them all on at the same time after a while. But then, and, you know, the Shola actually kind of got the better of him in certain circumstances, but Rasputin ended up taking over, you know, so to speak, because he actually got him with a morphine crucifix, where I guess he dripped out morphine and stuff through a spear tip. It was wild. But yeah, I definitely want to say that Rasputin was just a standout, dog. Absolutely a standout. I didn't like really how he went out, because son, he was so hard. Like, Ralph gets back up, you know, and then Conrad attacks him and stuff like that, and they're going back to back, having to fight him 2v1. They're literally stabbing this nigga. He's eating that shit, holding the sword in place and everything. And, you know, even then, while it's 2-on-1, he smacks the shit out of the boy, gets him out of the way, and Ralph has to take over, and he finally is basically able to put this nigga down. Now, what I want to say earlier is that he has a little 1v1 time with Conrad, and it's crazy, dog. Because he's over here talking about, oh, sweet boy, please, I want you to kill me, but you won't do it. And that's where he fucked up. He should have just shot him. But the gun only had one bullet in it, because it's just one of those little, very small guns, stuff like that. Only has one bullet in the chamber. And he was in for the beatdown after that. But no, like I said, his father ends up taking care of this nigga, or so we thought. I mean, he literally runs him through, and he's down under the water and the ice and everything. And then they go back inside, and it's all hunky-dory, normal shit. And then you see this nigga rise up in the background. Like, I don't know how he got back up. That shit was wild. They was really treating him like a monster. But then Polly comes out of nowhere and shoots the student in the hand. I have a little problem with that, because it's like, come on, dog. Let us feel like we earned that victory. Let's feel like we earned that victory. And she made a wisecrack earlier talking about, oh, y'all should just use guns. Like, it doesn't even make any sense why you choose to use knives and all that other stuff. It's like, okay, we get it. That's the way the world's going. But Rasputin was going way too hard to be dispatched like that. And honestly, I wanted him to be the main villain. Like, it would have been nice if they were like ran through, and then, like, you know, we just bounce out. You know what I'm saying? And then he comes back later, and you're like, how the hell did you survive type shit? Like, that's more plausible to me, because, like, he was different from jump, dog. Like, they literally poisoned him with the dessert from before. The man literally just throws up, and he's like, oh, sorry, your pie, it didn't agree with me. Like, what the hell? But he explained how he takes a little poison every morning for breakfast just so he could be immune. But that's the type of energy he was on, and I was loving it. But so we move past him. Like I said, great fight, which is about halfway through the movie, stuff like that. You know, we finished that mission up. Rasputin, he's taken care of. You know, it seems like Russia's gonna stay involved or whatever, and then obviously Germany won't be able to go through with their plan, and the organization's plans are gonna fall apart, or so we thought. Obviously, that was not going to be the case. They have contingency plans, and the Tsar ends up abdicating his stuff, his throne, and then Lenin is also another henchman, so obviously he's making his place there. Now, the America, you look like some dumbasses, because Mr. Wilson, Miss President Wilson, you look like an idiot, dog. Okay, how are you gonna get caught and blackmailed with some chick coming in your office dancing? Obviously, she was another one of the henchmen and stuff like that. But that's wild. That's wild. But I am jumping ahead some. I am jumping ahead. Now, what I wanted to talk about is probably my favorite part of this movie, right? Conrad. And it's not really necessarily because of Conrad. It's obviously because of Ralph Fiennes. Now, the Duke of Oxford, boy, I tell you, is such a cool character because right after this mission, you know, they're riding home. It's a success. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, it was a hard-fought battle, all that there. But they got the job done. They succeeded in the mission. And, you know, it's actually Conrad's birthday, his 19th birthday. And so Paulie brings out the cake, Shola's there, his dad's there. And his dad actually wasn't really in the mood and stuff like that, riding back on the train. He was sitting off by himself because he had just broke his vow of pacifism. And for all intents and purposes, he killed Rasputin. So that was weighing heavily on him, and you can see that over there. But when Paulie pulled out the cake and stuff like that, comes out, it's a really cool moment, man, because you just see him snap out of it, and then he comes over, you know, wishes his son happy birthday, all that, and it's a great moment. But Conrad doesn't waste no time to press that issue because he's like, you know, I really appreciate all that y'all done for me, all this other stuff, and then now I hope that you'll be okay with me now choosing to go enlist and earn my honor and now nobly serve my country. And he's like, what are you talking about? You just did something that goes way above honor and all that stuff there. Like this, it just goes back to that obsession in serving your country, God and country. That's what's most important to him. And you know, he's basically putting it out there that he's not going to stop and wanting to do this. All he wants is his blessing to go. And he was like, he basically puts it like this, you know, you just kind of do what you want. It's kind of how he puts it, but you're asking me to give you the one thing that I can't do. I literally can't do that. So I'm not going to. And they just walk away, part ways at that point. Not even getting to say goodbye really or anything. Now, Conrad goes off to war, stuff like that. You see him training up. And at the same time, Paulie is out here decoding messages from the Germans. And it's wild because they're literally at the same time as all the agencies around the world trying to work together. And, you know, the United States and Great Britain, all of them, all the different agencies trying to work together to put a stop to this war, basically. But Paul is the one that ends up breaking the code and stuff like that. So you could tell that there's high levels of what's going on here. Really like Paulie. I've always liked that actress, to be honest. And it's pretty wild that she was playing that big of a role and she was just some maid. Obviously, she's not no regular maid because she's a sniper extraordinaire. And obviously, she's really good with the tech. I mean, of back then, obviously. Because you got to break codes and all that other stuff, decipher that. All that there, right? But Conrad goes off to war. You see him training up, stuff like that. And then you see him get his own mission, basically. But right before he's about to ship off, you know, his father meets with King George, and he's asking him, like, what else should we do? Like, it all seems lost. And then he actually gives him the code that was broken down, and it's basically what they need to make America come in and essentially put a stop to the war. And so they start celebrating it or whatever. And then he also says, well, let me do this. Let me go ahead and do you a favor and get your son out of harm's way so nothing happens to him, right? And so he does that. And he is actually instructed to go ahead and go back home. But he hits the old switcheroo and actually switches places with another soldier. And then he goes in his place and just assumes his name and, you know, goes with a whole other unit, everything. But, and his father kind of respects it. He really does, and it seems like he kind of has a change of heart. But he believes that his son's going to make it back. He believes in his son. Now, it gets kind of crazy because where they're at is essentially at a no man's land where they're in the trenches and all that other stuff. There, they see a spy running across that has information, but he gets gunned down. It looks like he gets gunned down. It looks like he gets hit with a bomb, right? And you know, the leader or whatever comes over and it's like, okay, I need 6 volunteers. He obviously steps forward. No one else does, so they just pull 5 other people. And honestly, it's kind of crazy because it was a suicide mission. It really was. And they have a sick battle scene. Now, honestly, if I'm being honest, this is probably my favorite fight scene. This is my favorite fight scene, right? Because it's like 2 groups. It's Conrad's group along with his leader and then the 5 other volunteers, right? And then they're having to like duck walk, kind of, you know. They're having to shuffle and stay real close to the ground, stuff like that. And then they come up on like 7 other people doing the same exact thing. It's the other side, but it was clean because they're basically two spy teams coming up on each other, and then they kind of end up having an understanding because they stop and they look at each other and then they start signaling, because if either one of them pulls out their weapons and actually starts firing the guns, they're all gonna get mowed down by the MGs and stuff like that, right? So they all decide to put away the guns and stuff like that, and take out the knives and the axes and the hammers, son. And that shit is fire because then they start slowly crawling up. And then boom, son, we start going ham. And it's wild because Conrad's never killed nobody before, but he has to make the decision real quick, and he starts getting it done. And he's taking dudes out. He really is. But he takes like 4 people out. Last dude he ends up trying to take out doesn't go so well for him. He's on the back foot. The leader kind of sacrifices himself by pulling out the gun and capping him. But he gets mowed down in the process. But he's able to actually escape into a bunker of sorts. And he happens to fall into the bunker that the spy was in. The spy from before. The one that we thought had got obliterated. Man, but he didn't see him at first, but when he fell into that little trench and he started crying, dog, it was like, because he realized it, and he was like mumbling to himself, like, he got it now. Like, what his father was talking about, he warned him. He warned him what war was going to do to him and having to kill people like that. And then to learn that war is not this noble thing. All the people that volunteer with you, they're all dead. It's you on your own, and no one's out looking for you. You're by yourself. So you thought. But he actually finds the spy, and the spy kind of gives him comfort. He was like, "It's your first time?" And he was like, "Yeah, my first time was even worse than me losing this leg, because his leg was literally blown off." And it's crazy because he comforts him, and he holds him, because he is like a little boy still, you know. But at sunrise, he picks him up. You know, he's running off the battlefield, stuff like that. Corny scene a bit, because it's like, we don't have to do all this unnecessary slow motion. Like, let's make it a little quicker, speed it up. But it gets the point across, right? And they almost make it all the way back to the trench. And then an explosion happens right behind them. And then they fly like 20 feet into the trench they're trying to get to. Conrad pops up miraculously. And he's like, okay, ask him. He's got the information you need. And the guy was dead. He had taken the full brunt of that explosion instead of Conrad. And that's wild because he was right there. They had basically made it. And then, boom, no, he gets taken out. So, here's where it gets rough, right? Because they're congratulating him and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, I've never seen something more worthy of a Victoria Cross than that. You're definitely going to get one after that. And he says what his name is. But he's still using the name of the person he impersonated. And another unit's walking by him and stuff like that in a nearby trench. And he's like, oh, what'd you say your name was? And then he calls him out for being a fraud. Because he's like, no, the hell you're not. I know that dude. That's my friend. And he jumps the gun and comes to a conclusion that wasn't right. Like, obviously it's a misunderstanding, but he doesn't take time to ask questions because the little metal clasp that he has is a German case. So he thinks he's a German spy. pops him. And it's crazy because he headshots him. And, you know, you think that maybe there's a little room for ambiguity because they do the slow motion shot and you see him falling from the side. Like, you're seeing him dead on, but you're seeing him from the side, so you can't tell where exactly he got hit. He got hit smack in the middle of his forehead. Done. And when his father finds out this information, it's like, jeez, man. It's like, my God. What else does this man have to go? Not only did he break his vow to himself, to his wife, now he's lost his boy. The boy that has so much potential. And you could see that he was going to go on to do great things, stuff like that. Had a heart of gold, all that. But that's the point about war. That's the whole thing about war. It's like the nobleness of fighting for your country and all that. It's great and everything. It really is. But at the end of the day, you're fighting and dying for a noble cause, but he died for no reason. That's some of the things that happen in war sometimes. The thing, you have to be lucky, but you also have to be on the ball. Things have to go your way. It has to be a mix of a lot of things. And so he goes through a dark time after that, but King George kind of rallies him and stuff like that. And Polly does too, because she reveals her feelings for him and stuff like that. But it kind of snaps him out of it because he realizes that, you know, you do still have to go and carry on the fight. You know what I'm saying? It's like your son strove to be a noble, honorable person. And then you even lectured your son before about your family, right? And the history of your family. This is why I like it, because it all comes full circle. And I think it's really just because this actor, Ralph, that it is able to do that. Because he lectured his son early in the movie about how their family came from thieves and tyrants and stuff like that, and eventually they stole and did so much greasy stuff that eventually they became noblemen, and then with nobility they gained status and reputation, all that stuff there. But he said back in the day it was an insult to be regarded as a gentleman, but that's a badge of honor today. And to a sense, you have to have both of that. You have to be willing to be about the action, but still stick to your code, even when it's hard and even when things aren't going your way. It doesn't mean that sticking to that code is any less valuable or sticking to that code is not less valuable than someone getting it done by any means necessary. It's just a different level of commitment that you have to have. And it's not that that one's greater than the other. It's just different because he couldn't just do things in an unethical way, because then how's that going to reflect on your son and his sacrifices? At the end of the day, your son's sacrifice wasn't for nothing. Like, he got the mission done. How he went out is the part that hurts the most, obviously, because it's completely unnecessary. It didn't have to happen, but that's all the more reason why he has to continue taking things into his own hands and not allowing governments to get in his way, because, you know, things are continuing to spiral out of control, but he takes the initiative, forms the Kingsman. And it's wild because it's really just, you know, Paulie and Shola and him, but now he's got his mojo back, baby. And honestly, the villain that they chose to be the head honcho, right? It was Morton all along, and that was the advisor to Kitchens, who gets killed pretty early in the movie, and that was essentially Ralph's very good friend, you know what I'm saying? Another friend of his, but someone he had very deep history with, seemed like one of his best friends or whatever. He was the advisor to him, it was Morton, right? But that was a problem with this movie, because, like, Rasputin was going so hard that we were ready to follow him as the main villain of the movie. And honestly, I thought he was going to somehow get a second win, stuff like that, come through, be the end villain. Obviously, the way they settled his fight with Paulie, that wasn't going to be the case. So we had to wait and hope that the main villain was gonna come through and do the thing. And honestly, not so much. It was a really cool fight in terms of the sword fight that takes place, and it's pretty cool action sets, stuff like that. The environment's crazy because they're literally on the top of a plateau cliff thing. It's just wild. it's just that his motivations for why he was doing what he wants to do is like, oh, Great Britain oppressed Scotland so much, so now I'm gonna get Germany and all this other stuff to beat down on them and take revenge. Just like, you know, I was expecting more, but you know, I guess it makes sense. You know, everyone has their own motivations, and you know, it just depends on how you go about things to see who comes out to be the winner. Who's the smartest and doesn't advertise themselves the most is probably going to end up getting the job done. While Rasputin was going hard, he was a little bit too much out in the spotlight. But like I said, I still feel like they could have ended up making him the main villain. Didn't really go that way. It still worked out because it was a great fight, stuff like that. But that is one of my nitpicks with the movie. I would have rather just stuck with Rasputin than having Morton end up being the villain. And he was kind of going hard, but I just didn't really care for that too much there. But that's pretty much going to do it for all of my thoughts on this movie, y'all. Like I said, Ralph Fiennes, masterful job. He's a hell of an actor. If you haven't seen what he's in, Mallory in James Bond. He's Voldemort in Harry Potter. So you know that he is a damn good actor. And the people that they also chose to be the supporting actors actually did a really good job. Because we start off with Kingsman, then we kind of go to a war movie, but we bring it back to Kingsman, obviously. And like I said, I'm quite surprised that, you know, they were dedicating so much time to see how the characters were developing in the face of everything that was happening, especially the Duke of Oxford, because he's a standout man, and he ended up being the Kingsman, who created the Kingsman agency service. So yeah, like I said, that's gonna do it for this video. You know, comment what you thought about the movie, what you think about Rasputin, what you think about the twist in the end of who the actual villain was. You know, what were your standouts? Who was your sleepers in terms of their performance? Things like that. You know, I think it's pretty clear that Rasputin, I didn't expect him to be actually going that hard like that, but I thought he did a hell of a job, and I wish I got more of him, but hey, Ralph took me through on that one. So a nice little bow on the Kingsman trilogy or whatever. You know, they left themselves a little room where they could do one over World War II. They could, but you know, we'll wait and see on that. I don't think they have to. I think they actually left it at a good place. The one good thing I will say about that villain is that he's the one that came up with the manners, MAKETH MAN. That shit was kind of hard. And yeah, so like I said, it was a fun time. Not the greatest movie, but 7 out of 10. So a good start to 2022. A damn good start to 2022. Like, comment, subscribe, all that other stuff. It's been your boy T-Rav, and I'm out.